Hare Krishna. Am I audible? Okay. I'm Bhakta William from Los Angeles, and I was encouraged to come visit San Diego to get some spiritual recharge by the wonderful ashram devotees here. So I'm looking forward to taking all of your association and association of the entire congregation over this weekend. I can already tell everyone here has very nice spiritual energy, so thank you for the nice welcome. We can invoke some auspiciousness in the atmosphere by chanting Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stotra Shata Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavad-gītā Ki Jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. So, tonight I'd like to direct you to the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-gītā, verse 15. Which we can find
page 613.
On mine it's 607, but maybe different people have different version. But chapter 15, text 15, that's the idea. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you. So we'll chant one line at a time and you can follow me. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha Vedescha sarverahameva vedyo Vedanta kridveda videva chaham Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto Mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha Vedescha sarverahameva vedyo Vedanta kridveda videva chaham. Would anyone in the audience like to chant the verse? Please go ahead. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto Mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha Vedescha sarverahameva vedyo Vedanta krid veda videva chaham. Anyone else? Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto Mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha Vedescha sarverahameva vedyo Vedanta krid veda videva chaham. Any last devotees would like to chant? Alright, we'll go into the word for word. Sarvasya. You can chant after me. Sarvasya. Of all living beings. Cha. And. Aham. I. Hridi. In the heart. Sanivistaha. Situated. Mataha. From me. Smritihi. Remembrance. Jnanam. Knowledge. Apohanam. Forgetfulness. Cha. And. Vedaihi. By the Vedas. Cha. Also. Sarvaihi. All. Aham. I am. Eva. Certainly. Vedyaha. Knowable. Vedanta Krit. The compiler of the Vedanta. Vedavid. The knower of the Vedas. Eva. Certainly. Cha. And. Aham. I. I'll read now the translation once and then we'll break it down phrase by phrase. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So now, please repeat each phrase. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Now let's read Srila Prabhupada's purport together. The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramātmā in everyone's heart, and it is from Him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all-pervading, He is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramātmā, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. The Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead, back to home. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Krishna in his incarnation as Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, He is the supplier and digester of foodstuff, the witness of His activity, and the giver of knowledge in the form of the Vedas, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Śrī Kṛṣṇa, the teacher of the Bhagavad-gītā. He is worshipable by the conditioned soul. Thus God is all good, God is all merciful. Antaha pravishtaha shasta jananam. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So not only does a living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. If one is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because a living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. Vedic literature confirms this. Yo so sarver veder giyate. In all Vedic literature, beginning from the 4 Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads and Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing Him. The ultimate goal is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedanta Sutra 1.1.4 confirms this in the following stages. Tat tu samanvayat. One can attain perfection in 3 stages. By understanding Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different processes, one can approach Him. And at the end, one can attain the supreme goal, which is no other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined. So it's as easy as ABC, right? There are just 3 steps. Prabhupada in his really nice and thorough purport on this verse, at the end he is telling us 3 stages. Understand Vedic literature, perform the different processes that are outlined in Vedic literature, worshipping the Supreme Lord, and at the end, you go to the goal of Vedic literature, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. ABC, 1, 2, 3. Now, of course, it's not so simple for us because we have a lot of conditioning that comes from our past lives, and we're in the material world with we've accumulated a lot of karma over time, and that we have to be purified or sort of purged of all of that, before we can go back home to Godhead. But these 3 steps, which are outlined by Prabhupada in his purport, are not impossible, while perhaps difficult for some. And in fact, Prabhupada says over and over in his books that not only can we get ready to go back home, back to Godhead in one lifetime, we can do it in 1 minute. Now, that's that sort of thing like chanting purely the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is not something that, certainly I am not on that platform. Probably some of you in the audience might be. But I think the main point is that it is doable in this lifetime. And this lifetime, we have already inherited this body. And there is nothing predetermined about what happens after this lifetime. So we should try and use this lifetime as seriously as we can to follow these really pure and beautiful instructions which are given in the Srimad Bhagavad-gītā. So let's break down those 3 processes. We can maybe have some discussion about what those 3 stages towards attaining perfection look like. So the first one is understanding Vedic literature. We talk a lot about understanding Vedic literature, or hearing Vedic literature, and so on. But actually, sometimes someone may pick up a book on the street, and they may not immediately, even after reading, they may read the whole Bhagavad-gītā cover to cover. They still may not understand anything. It may go in one ear and out the other. And that has to do with the listener, but also the speaker. Because who we approach to receive Vedic knowledge is a very serious decision, which we must take in a rather grave manner, I would say. We are very lucky that we have these books which have been published, commented on and published by Srila Prabhupada, because so many of senior disciples of Srila Prabhupada have commented to us that they read 9 editions of the Bhagavad-gītā, or maybe even 20 editions of the Bhagavad-gītā, and they read so many different Bhagavad-gītās. And what did they do? Nothing. It was purely an academic study for them. They just kept reading this book over and over, hoping to get some new conclusion. But the problem was there was no qualified speaker that they were hearing from or reading from. And so it was going in one ear and out the other. Or sometimes worse, it was convincing people of an incorrect conception of the Supreme. Perhaps some editions of the Bhagavad-gītā which had been published at that time were saying that, Krishna is not really the Supreme Lord, or maybe some were saying that actually the highest version of the Supreme is, the Brahman, and, that God doesn't have a form or something. So those Bhagavad-gītās didn't make any devotees. And then Srila Prabhupada came, and he started publishing the Bhagavad-gītā and his other books. He published the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he published the first 9 and then some of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and many other books commenting on these literatures. And suddenly 10,000 devotees were joining and becoming these amazing, amazing devotees of Krishna. Like here in San Diego, we have Dravida Prabhu, right? Amazing devotee of Krishna who, through the empowerment from Prabhupada, became a devotee. So the mercy has to come from somewhere. It doesn't just come from thin air. It might feel like it's coming from thin air, but actually qualified sages or teachers like Srila Prabhupada are the ones that can distribute this Vedic literature, which can empower us to understand it. So it's very important to be committed to reading the books which Srila Prabhupada has given us, because they are really the finest presentation of these works. And understanding Vedic literature also means approaching it in a submissive way. If we are reading the Bhagavad-gītā with the intention that we want to use it to give us excuses in life, like I've heard so many people say, oh, the Bhagavad-gītā says actually you should respect your elders, and you know, we should offer our obeisances to elders or something. And so they justify maybe some unkind behaviors towards their juniors, something like that. Actually, the Gita says the opposite. He says that, you know, you should respect those who are qualified, regardless of material designations. So, some people may be approaching Vedic literature like the Bhagavad-gītā with the intent to misuse, and that also will not achieve perfection. We must submissively inquire to Śrī Kṛṣṇa and Śrī Guru about Vedic knowledge with the intent simply to move towards the ultimate goal of this life, which is to go back home. So that's understanding Vedic literature. Now, the second stage which Prabhupada describes is the performing of the different processes one can use to approach Śrī Kṛṣṇa. So there are many different places in our Shastra where processes of approaching Krishna are mentioned. Has anyone heard of the 9 processes of devotional service? So that is one nice list of things we can do. Starting with remembering Krishna, and then chanting his glories. Shravanam, Kirtanam are the first ones, right? So tonight, make sure and remember what we chanted in the Gita. Make sure and remember the verse. Don't forget. It's the first thing, right? Shravanam. And then Kirtanam. You all chanted the glorious words of the Bhagavad-gītā, spoken by Śrī Kṛṣṇa himself. You chanted the most beautiful song of Bhaktivinoda Thakur about Radha and Madhava in Vrindavan. So you're doing Kirtanam. So 2 out of 9. Already, you know, taking really nice steps on the way, no matter where you've come from. We can also go to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where the 5 main angas of devotional service are described. Has anyone heard of the 5 main angas of devotional service? One of them is worshipping the deity. Does anyone know any others? Want to share another? Chanting the holy name, associating with devotees, visiting holy places, and if we can, we like to live there. But if we cannot live in Mathura, which is, we understand Mathura to mean the entirety of Vraj Dham, we like to make the place where we are into Vraj Dham, which is why we have welcomed Radha Giridhari, right, into this amazing, beautiful temple, because we're bringing the lords of Vrindavan into this temple to make San Diego, Pacific Beach, even Pacific Beach can be Vrindavan if you have the right consciousness. And the 5th one is hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. So these are the 5 main angas of devotional service. And it's even said that if we can just do one of those 5 things perfectly, we will go back home. Even just one. So you can pick one of the 5 or all of the 5. And if you can achieve one of those perfectly, you will go back to Godhead. It's guaranteed. It's right in Shastra. It says. And Shastra is never wrong. And actually the beauty of having a community of devotees is that people with different propensities can perform different duties. Not everyone has to be a deity worshipper. Not everyone has that kind of Brahminical quality of doing achaman all the time and wanting to stay extremely clean and pure. Some people like to go outside where it's dirty and everything, so they can chant. They can go on Harinam, and they can make new devotees, and that's beautiful. Some people are very scholarly. There are many devotees who have been so absorbed in the Shastra. And so they are hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam, and they are having realizations from Srimad Bhagavatam. And so according to each devotee's propensity, they are moving towards perfection in their own way, which I actually think is very beautiful. For me personally, I am a little bit interested in deity worship. So I thought I might share some verses from the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, because the Bhagavad-gītā mentions instructions from Krishna himself about deity worship, so it's actually quite powerful for us to hear. I'll just say a couple of verses, perhaps in English, because I think they're very nice. So he starts to give a lot of instructions about, cleanliness, chanting your Gayatri 3 times a day, which way you should be facing when you chant your Gayatri. A lot of rules, which are very nice to follow, actually. It's very nice to follow. But then, he gives some very simple instructions about love and how, deity worship is not just about how many blades of kusha grass are in your seat. But he actually says in this 18th verse of the 27th chapter of the 11th canto, "Even very opulent presentations do not satisfy me if they are offered by non-devotees. But I am pleased by any insignificant offering made by my loving devotees, and I am certainly most pleased when nice presentations of fragrant oil, incense, flowers, and palatable foods are offered with love." At the beginning, when we start to do deity worship, it should not be too loving. We don't get the idea from the Srimad Bhagavatam that we should immediately think we are gopis or peacocks in Vrindavan and that we are going to do whatever and not follow any rules. It's not like that. But you can have love in servitude at first. And then, as you perform deity worship, our acharyas have told us that the relationship between you and Krishna may evolve. You may have a little bit more intimate relationship as you do follow the rules for a very long time. But this process is available to anyone, rich, poor, anything, because what do you have to offer? Incense, flowers, food, couple bucks at the temple gift shop. No problem, right? Simple things. If we have the right feeling in our heart, those are the things which convince Krishna to bring us back home. Even very opulent preparations do not satisfy me if they are offered by non-devotees. So it means we have to identify ourselves as devotees of Krishna. And we need to cultivate our loving relationship with Krishna. Make our offerings with that love. First love in servitude, and then maybe love in some other ras. And then we will accept. Very simple. And then if you can do that, then your deity worship is perfect. And you've done one of the 5 angas of devotional service, main angas. And so you go back home. ABC. In this way, we can understand that this process is not so complicated. We can get so bogged down in seeing there are so many rules and there are so many different things which different devotees are doing. But really the most important thing is to just do your service. Do your service. Do it nicely. Do it with love, do it with feeling. And Krishna promises he'll be satisfied. It's a promise, it's a guarantee. Shastra never lies. And so if we can trust that, we can have firm faith in Krishna's words which are presented to us in Shastra, then everything else will follow. So let's just try and do that. Does anyone have any comments they'd like to share before we end?
I have one comment.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody, I know some, Guru, other Parampara,
Mm-hmm.
he was very fond of this particular shloka, 15th chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And he was recommending it very powerfully, very strongly, that everybody should chant it daily, So what do you think that why or anybody would be that, fond of this particular shloka?
Why this sloka?
Yes.
Well, it's very easy for us, for some reason, because we are in the material world, it's very easy to forget where is Krishna and who is Krishna in relation to us. And it's all right there in the first line. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivrishto mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. He's the source of everything, and He's in your heart. And so if you ever forget, which you shouldn't forget, but if you do forget, for some reason, and we just chant, and we try and remember Krishna is in our heart, and we try and increase our faith that Krishna is in our heart, then it will come back to us. Actually, there is one devotee in ISKCON. His name is, he has been here sometimes. His name is His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu. I don't know if you've heard of him. He started one program called CHAD, Chapter a Day. You've heard of this program? So it's a very nice program. He encourages for 2 weeks at a time devotees to chant one chapter of Bhagavad-gītā in Sanskrit and English if you can, but if not, just Sanskrit, for 2 weeks until the next Ekadashi, and then switch to the next chapter. And in that way we can always constantly remember the beautiful words of Śrī Kṛṣṇa in the Bhagavad-gītā. Because all the words of every verse are very beautiful. I am very attached to this verse. That's why I talked about it tonight. I got to pick the verse, so I chose that one. But so it's a popular verse. Many people like that verse. And 15th chapter is very powerful. But yeah, that's one way I recommend to all of you to develop some attachment to the Bhagavad-gītā. Because it takes, how long does it take? 10 minutes tops? Chant one chapter, 10 minutes. Not so bad. And once you start memorizing, then you can even do it while you're driving or you're in the bus or something. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Urdhva Mula Madashakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandam Siyasya Parnani Yastam Vedasa Vedavid. And all the way through the 15th chapter, right? So maybe if you have some particular attachment to that chapter, maybe chant chapter 15. So, but it's a very beautiful verse because Krishna is in our heart. Is there any other discussion from anyone else? Okay. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you again.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.